Oh, that's loud. Good morning. Good morning. What day is it? Tuesday. Tuesday morning. I don't think we're live yet. Hey, we're live on Zoom, but we are not streaming. There we go. All right. Let's see what happens now. Yes, we are. Welcome. Bit of a slow start this morning. Welcome. Here we go. Now I can see you. All right. What is going down in Tuesday town? What's happening? What is happening? Who's on social media? Let me get the restream up. There we go. All right. Yeah. It is a slow start this morning, but that doesn't stop us, does it? How's your day going? You're probably halfway through your day, most of you. Some of you are in the future. Some of you are in the future. You know, if you're over the other side of the world, you're not in my home country. You're in Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. Oh, all right. Why is it a slow start? Oh, do you really want to know? Probably not. Suffice to say, when you have remembrances, there's when you wake up and there's something on your heart. I dreamt of my grandmother, and then when I woke up, I remembered, and I mentioned that my grandmother, the day before she passed, asked, "What day did Pa die?" Her husband. And it was the next day. She died the same day as my grandfather, her husband. And I was remembering that this morning. And although I had sadness, I had so much unconditional love. Like, that is unconditional love. Choosing in that moment. It's time. It's time. And she just went. So my grandparents are on my heart today. And so I messaged my brother, who's probably still asleep because it's early hours of the morning. I messaged my brother, and I had a few tears, and I felt the love and the fear in that process. And, this is the time that happened. So my body, my energy is remembering. So there you go. I guess we can start there. How many of you relate or can relate to feeling sad or to feeling love, yet it's it's a felt sense that could also be sorrow. Does that make sense? You following me? And in the big scheme of things, does it even matter what it is that you're feeling? Do you need to name it? Or just be with that? Be with it. So this morning I sat in meditation, and that's why I wasn't really that late. I think I was on time, but the process to coming on was a little bit later for me, like my personal process, because I sat with the beloved in that unconditional love, in that connection, in the beauty of love and fear, in the beauty of heaven and earth. Let me just put a comment in the chat so that we can make sure that if people are there, they can say hello. Right. So the energy or the felt sense is quite serene today. So we'll see where we go. We'll see where we go. Just waiting for people to come on so that you can talk to me. Hey, as I said that, Angelique. Hey, how are you? Good, good, good. All right. I can see that there are people here. I still feel like I'm talking to myself. So let me just get rid of all of this setup screen stuff, and I can focus on what we're here for. What are we here for? What are we here for? On the weekend, we did a 2-day training. I'm not sure the people that I can see, I'm not sure that you were there. I was going to say too bad for you, right? However, maybe we'll touch on some of that, and maybe we won't. We did go over techniques, processes to meet the sensations in your body, to meet what's going on with your physical and energetics that relate to fear. All different types, whatever you might name them: sadness, sorrow, grief, loss, whatnot. It's not about trying to get out of it, although some of you may need to have some processes to feel safe and secure, right? Okay. Yeah. And that's the thing, that's life, isn't it? We're always navigating the breath in, the breath out, the fear of fear, the fear of love. And if you heard my little story this morning, 5 minutes ago, about my grandmother, she was 98 and she just kept going until she didn't. She chose to leave. She chose that she was going back to the beloved and her beloved, my grandfather. And they had a beautiful love story. Maybe I'll tell you one day. He would drive in his 90s. He would drive to the home where she was because she couldn't. She was in bed. Her legs weren't working, and he would drive in his 90s to visit her every single day until he left. Right? In his 90s. Yeah. It's a sweet example. So they're on my heart today, but really what they're showing me is, one, how to navigate life, the love, the fear of fear, and the fear of love. So loving so much that you're scared, it scares you. And usually the fear is that you expand and you become so much of who you are that life changes, and change is scary. So if you get that big break, if you get that job, if you get that to be interviewed on television, or you get that, you win that award. I was saying, actually, I've watched the Olympics a couple of times. You know, I thought, I wonder, you know, I'm just going to watch normal TV, watch the Olympics, see what's on. And I'm glad that I did, because some of the things that I was watching, and how when people win, do they understand all that goes with what that means? And some of the people I've spoken to, right, people in my community that I've spoken to lately, and, you know, some of them are at that level or have been. I spoke to a world champion. I won't say from what country and whatnot, but not a Western country. And just what she's been through, and who owned her. I know that sounds horrible, but right. And then when you win for your country, and it's your win, do you understand the process? It's like when you win an award, or you go and do a movie. Do you understand where I'm going? Maybe you don't. Maybe that's not your world. Well, then you're on this merry-go-round of interviews and shuttled from place to place to place to place, right? So what you chose, and in the moment what's being chosen for you, it's completely changes your life, and not always in the ways that you've been prepared for. Okay? So there's fears there, fears of love, fears of making it, fears of being loved by millions of people. Does that sound crazy to you? Why would somebody fear love or being liked by everybody? Well, it depends what your protective style is. It depends what your trauma is, or your relational injury is, right? Because if relationship is dangerous to you, when you start being noticed, that can scare you, and you have no full consciousness of it, because it's at the core of your wounding, or the injury, the relational injury, right? So as you start making it in whatever way that that is for you, maybe you have a, see, I don't want to use, I'm not sure everyone can, you know, we've got to find things that are meaningful for you. So what's meaningful for you? What's a goal or something that you wanted to experience? It may be travel. I was saying this the other day. I have no real desire to travel, but I speak to people all the time, and they're like, oh, I just want to travel and travel and travel. And now I understand my dad, because I talked to my dad, and he just had no want or need for travel. And as a, you know, in my 20s, I couldn't understand that. But he traveled all his life from 17 years old, all over the world, all sorts of experiences. He doesn't need to do that. He's had those experiences. He has no desire. And I'm sort of at that space too, because I did the same. I've traveled all over the world. I've worked with the energy and, walked the ley lines and, you know, uh, shared energy and whatnot at the power spots of the earth, all over the place as a gatekeeper, right? I don't need to be on that earth, that place, to be in relationship with it, right? I am the gates. They are within me. I am within them. But going back to my point is that if that's a goal for you, great. It's a beautiful goal. Maybe it is to walk the ley lines or the dragon lines or the Mary and Michael lines, whatever you want to call them, they're all the same thing, right? The mother and father lines. I had no goal to do that. As a mystic, I end up doing things and being shown at the time, and right? You don't choose to be a mystic. You don't wake up one day and say, oh, I'm going to be a mystic. And in fact, when all the stuff starts to come in and happen and you're told this is what you're here to do and this is what you're doing now and that's what you're doing then. And most of the time, some of you that know, I would be like, what? I don't want to do that. Why do I got to go there? I have no desire to go there, right? I just do what I'm told. Do what I'm told. Even today, here I am, showing up. Why? To be fully truthful, most of the time, I have no idea. But if Angelique hasn't been here for a while and she's shown up today, chances are there's some energy exchanging here that, there's some healing happening that we don't even have to know how or why. That's just my role in the world. Accept it, don't accept it. Fear of fear, fear of love. Fear of fear is taking that on as a little human and going, oh my God, I don't know, right? Or how can I possibly live up to that? Or, the more expanded that I get, then eventually I won't be here at all. And so you pull back, fear of love. Or you meet your beloved in flesh, which is what happened to me. I had and still do have the most amazing direct connection to the beloved. And then when I met a human, and I was shown, and I was like, again, I've been like this all my life. I don't do it anymore. But up until I met him, I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Because if I merge with a human in the way that I was being shown, I had a fear. I had a fear of fear and a fear of love. Hey, Angus. Angus the cat. Angus the cat's going to be a star. And I chose consciously to lean into the fear of what would happen, and being open with the fears I was feeling with that person and saying, this is what I'm scared of. Very early in our relationship, like the third day that we met, we had this conversation of, I have this marriage with the beloved. I have this connection, union. At 50 years old, actually, the picture that's, some of you will see it, that's on the live in the white. That was when I married myself. The masculine and feminine within. That was when I chose to marry myself. And that's the picture on most of the things that because it symbolizes where I was complete enough within myself. I was complete enough within myself. It didn't mean that I wasn't ever going to be with the beloved enfleshed, right? It just meant at that point in my life, I was complete. I didn't need or want, right? And of course, just after all of that, this beloved shows his face, ruins everything. No, potentially. I mean, if you look at what happened, yeah, I lost everything that I knew. I lost everything that I knew, right? My country, my house, my car, my belongings, my children, my grandchildren, my parents, my grandparents died. I wasn't there, right? My clients that I saw in person, like I had another death. But what did I receive? Oh, hear this. I didn't know I was going here. I didn't know where I was going today. I was like, oh, do I even show up? Hoo. Right? I messaged my brother this morning through my tears. Why did I reach out to my brother? Because my grandparents were like our parents. We lived with them. They took me in when I don't know if you know my story. Man, I have stories, people. Oh my goodness. When I was homeless with my eldest daughter. When I say homeless, I don't mean on the street. But I'd moved to another state because I had nowhere to live. And my grandparents said, you will come here. I had no choice. My grandmother is like the matriarch of the family. My mum's mum, matriarch of the family. She speaks, you do, right? Never had to yell at us or anything, but there was a matriarchal power in this woman. And, my brother and myself in our teenage years went and lived with my grandparents. They were like our parents. I do have parents. My parents are still alive. And, but they had their own stuff and still do, right? And beautiful souls and all the rest. But, I'll tell those stories another time. My point is that I reached out to my brother because when my grandparents died, it hit him so hard because it was like his mum and dad had died. He was visiting them. I used to visit them 3 times a week. It was like they were our parents. And my brother then, not long after that, was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor. So I'm reaching out to my brother today because it's sort of in the field, my grandparents' energy, and checking in on him because there's a link to what's going on for him and some of you, what our so cancer, tumors, right? Particular emotions. Oh, thank you. Now I know why I went there. I never know where I'm going. I'm just listening. All right. The emotion and how that manifests our illness and our experience. I spoke to somebody else, again, not mentioning any names, and you're not on, but I'll never, share too much that it will say who it is because confidentiality is key. But somebody wrote me a very long message yesterday she wants to work with me. And I'm telling you, there's a myriad of what's going on in her life. You name it, it's happening. Her life, uh, in her parents' life, in her children's life, in her grandchildren's life, like everything that you could possibly think of is happening. And it reminds me of when I was a trauma therapist. I used to do home visits, probably the only one that ever worked in that way, but I would come to your house so that I could see the environment, I could see the interactions, family interaction, all of it, right? Holistic approach. But they would say, oh, I'm having a really tough day today. This has happened. And I'd be like, well, that's exactly when I should be there. It's exactly what am I coming for a cup of tea? Am I coming for a little chit chat and a I don't know, cucumber sandwich? Is that what you have at high tea? Cucumber sandwiches? I don't know. I'm Australian, but the English there, right? Oh yes, please. So what's the weather like? Would you like some chocolate? Oh, I bought this from the farmer's market, right? No. When you're in the dark, when you're in it, when it hits the fan, when everything is going toxic, you want me there. I'm not your feel-good person. Although apparently, and this is the other side of it. It's so hilarious to me. But I'm going to share it because when people are going through all their stuff, huge trauma over lifetimes and still in it, and they have to think whether they want to touch into that. Now, I understand it because it's fear. And you think, because I know myself, you think I haven't been through it? And you haven't heard anything yet. And I'm not going to, I'm not one to just go, blah, this is my story. But you'll hear it peppered through. I've experienced that, like, I was a teenage mum, homeless. Hello? Right? And then ostracized by society because of my age. When my daughter was born, they took her from me purely because I was underage. And I fought to get her back. And I had to get my sister, who was only 18, she's my older sister. I called her and I said, I don't know where my baby is. They took her. And I thought, oh, they've taken her to wash her and all of that. Because I was very clued on as you knew me as a teenager. I was more mature then than I am now, right? I had to be to survive. But they took it. I fought. And I've written a little bit about it. And I got her back. You know what happened when I got her back? So they put me in this brand spanking new, beautiful room in the hospital, private. And when I demanded, I was a fighter, but I was like shy and sort of shamed as well, right? And when I got her back, my sister stood for me. No one else did. The social worker came in with adoption papers. The Benedictine monk came in. I had every religious person come in and right, to try and get me to relinquish my rights to my baby. And I didn't. I fought for her from the moment she was born. And in fact, I heard the little whisper. Have I told you the story? I don't know if I have. When I was pregnant, and I kept it a secret. Me and my best friend knew. I kept it a secret because I knew if I told people, I would be forced to, right? Thank goodness I had the smarts. Maybe not to get through, but anyway, but that child was the star, you know, the star shone. And I fought to keep her because I heard the voice. That's what I was supposed to do, right? And I went through all of that struggle, that ostracism. Is that the right word? Being ostracized. And I got to keep her, right? But then they sent me to a home. So I got sent to 2 homes. First, when I was pregnant, I was shipped off to a home. Nobody knew where I was, not even my brother and sister. So you want to talk about why I fight for freedoms? Because I had my freedom taken constantly when I was young. I fought all the way. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to be here. I'm going to finish my schooling. You know, it was with all the nuns. It was like run by some church. Anyway, they were nice to me. I still have fond memories of Sister Sue and all of that. But then you go off to the hospital, and underneath it, and there's so many stories of this. In fact, her father, this happened to his mother, and he was adopted out. So generational stuff. Interesting, huh? And it still happens today. So don't underestimate it. Still happens today. Many are forced to give up their rights to their children, right? Well, why did I go into working with traumatized kids in foster care? Predominantly Indigenous, because it was the generational impact of the stolen generation, where the children were taken from their families because of what was perceived to be not healthy or not in the best interest of the children. All unconscious. So coming back to how we make decisions, are they conscious or unconscious? How are we, or why are we the way we are? Why did I spend the majority of my life fighting for the rights of the most oppressed? Fighting for the rights of infants born and then removed from their families. Like, you know, obviously there's some, I worked with a woman who had 5 of her children removed at birth. You know, so what is she needing support with? What's the system like? Can we shift the system? Is this in the best interest of the child? Because if you know anything about brain development and trauma in early childhood, you remove a child from their primary caregiver, their mother, it F's up their brain. It's like so I worked in acquired brain injury, or I don't know what you call it here. What's it called? Anyway, we called it acquired brain injury, but there's the minor injuries. Trauma is similar to the minor injuries and how our regulating of our emotions. So when something comes in, whether we can, you know, just go from 1 to 1,000, or we can take a pause and then respond. If you have early childhood stuff going on, right? Relational, which means there's another person involved, being taken away from your mum, right? That's why I was saying in the training, I was saying, you know, there was a couple of questions I would ask when parents would call me for help for their children. And I would ask a few questions. I'd say, usually about their birth. Were they premature? Was it a cesarean? Was the mother or primary caregiver ill early in their life? So were they in hospital and looked after by grandparents or aunties and uncles and whatnot? All of these sorts of things. But there's so many things, and it's not to shame or blame anybody. It's not about the right or wrong. It's about an understanding of how our brain develops and what's needed, the nurture, the nature, to have the capacity to navigate our lives in a way that is, what would you say, conducive to what we want to experience. And we're not just experiencing life happening to us, right? Yeah, no? Let me read the chat. You're in the thick of it now. So why am I sharing this? Who knows? No. So, sometimes when you hear stories of hardship or stress or shock or whatnot, it's like, oh, poor person, or oh, I feel for them or whatever. Feel it in your body. When you hear a story or you see a story, or if you're watching the Olympics or the election stuff, depending what country you're in, or, pardon me, a movie, and it brings you to tears, or it brings you to laughter, or you feel it in your gut, right? Beautiful way to practice in a more safe or a safer place than out in the world, right? Because these are where you're being touched. And what you, I'm going to say like this. So Eric is my partner. He's very in touch with his emotions. Sometimes we'll watch something and I'll be like, are you crying? I don't laugh like this, but I'm like, you can see what touches him doesn't touch me. Or, I don't have a charge on it, or I've worked through, right? Again, no, it's not being better or worse than anyone. It's going, what is it that you tend to have a charge on? And are you saying, oh, I'm just sensitive, or I'm just emotional? Are you? You might be, but what does that even mean? Because what you're touched by is how you're wired, is how your energy system's put together. So it's how you came into the world. What happened in utero? What happened as you're being birthed? What was when your parents came together? What is what we call, I guess, we could call it the energy of the mother and father, or the essence, right? Determines what the essence of the child is on one level. What you're born with, that the energy that you're born with is determined by your parents and your grandparents. Now, you can shift and change that through being here, working, how you eat, how you sleep, how you live. Have you heard me talk about this? So if you're born with 80% like this prenatal and postnatal essence, right? Or chi. So you're born with 80%, and maybe your sister or your brother is born with 50% because maybe mum had a car accident or had mental health stuff after you were born, like whatever, something's happening to mum, right? And so that's impacting the child. So when you're born, so one's got 50% essence or energy, chi, particular type of energy, and one's got 80%. But the 50% person could be working consciously and be 100% of that 50%. The person with 80% may just squander their life and be working at 20%. So don't get caught up on, you know, if your parents had health problems or addictions or whatnot, right? Because we have the opportunity of postnatal essence, which means how we are in the world, how we then choose how to live and how to be and how to live to our full potential or our full essence, even if we were born, you know, with extra challenge. Because if you were, right, that could be your gift. That could be your gift. So if I look at what I've done, yeah. So someone's saying they had a difficult birth and complications, and the essence explains a lot, right? But also, if you were put in, you premature or you had early operations, medical things, right? You're away from your primary caregiver. So energetically, you're still attached, but physically, there's trauma happening, right? So again, if that's happened to you or you were the child, no blame or shame, guilt, any of that. It's about just having an understanding so that you can navigate your own stress and trauma and how it plays out unconsciously, how it stops you or creates behaviors, right? I'm just going to draw this because, I'm just showing off my shawl again. Yeah, Rebel likes this. Every time I show her, she smiles. Yeah. It's too hot to wear it, but the tree. Anyway. So let's just say this. Sometimes I'll call that the true identity, the Satnam, the meditative sort of neutrality of, or the core essence, right? It's the center of who you are. Like really, without all the other stuff. And then, right? So you're born and you are impacted a little. I guess that's all the little bits of, your parents' energy and grandparent, all the, what do you call it? Your generational stuff. And these link to what we can call adaptive strategies, for want of a better word, because that links to the type of trauma work that I specialize in, right? However, it can be the protectors or the cloaks or the masks or the veils that are preventing you from seeing clearly. So when we say you've got a trauma lens, you're seeing the world through all your trauma, and you may not even know what they are, right? This is what we're talking about. So just say you're born and then maybe you had a C-section birth. And I mentioned this in the training that, we come down the canal for multiple reasons, right? That humans are born early because of the size of our brain. So that massage, how our skull moves, but most importantly, well, maybe not most importantly for everybody, but the point that I'm trying to make is that it's the massaging and the connecting of the nerves, the nerves, the brain and the nerves, right? It's why a lot of animals are licking their babies to stimulate, to turn on stuff. It's like a button. So if you were a C-section, a lot of hospitals might not know now, not everybody, but there's more information and evidence coming out around what humans need, when, and how. Right? That stimulation, the touch. I did all this research on skin back in the day, and people thought I was a freak. And I was, because I was researching skin. Like, I mean, really looking at it on all different levels. And touch, right? I even did this installation as an artist because most of my art is around, raising awareness of all sorts of stuff around the human condition, of the stripping away of the skin. And you had to look down into it. It was a sculpture, but you look down into it, and it was my face being stripped away. It's quite gross, but it's called erasure. Erasure. Right? So how many of you have had traumatic experiences that you're trying to erase? You're trying to rub out. And you get to a layer, and then you've got to rub this, and then you've got to rub that. Right? So that was the art that I did was my therapy. But because I was an academic as well, I was bringing it all together to go, well, how can I express what I know, but also what I'm feeling, how that can help other people? Like, how can that be not just a piece to go and look at and analyze, but a piece that you feel and you get some healing from? Right? Erasure. Anyway, a lot of my art, you see it, it'll be in the gallery for like a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then you never see it again. Right? I did ephemeral art. I do huge room installations you walk into and like feel that and then you never see them again. You can't even really photograph or video them because it's so fast. But that's life, isn't it? You experience something so grand and big, and then it's gone, and you've just got these memories. And sometimes the memories don't even connect. The memory, or the body memory, the felt sense, and you have no idea why you feel the way you do. And so you're looking out into the world and you go, it must be you. And you could be looking in the mirror when you say that, right? If you didn't have that scar, or would you? I don't know if you can see, I've got a big scar on my lip. Right? Or particular scar. Actually, I've got a few scars on my scar here where a boom box fell on my head when I was what? I you said in the 80s, I don't know if they did that, but my mum bought us these footsteps you put on the ground and you learn how to rap, how to break dance. do, 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 do. Anyway, whole another story. But right? So you look in the mirror and you go, oh, I wish I had straight hair, or I wish I had curly hair. Do you know I used to straighten my hair? I forgot I even had curly hair till I had kids. And then it was like full on, even bigger than it is now. This just blow dry my hair. That was the 80s and 90s. Just blow dry your hair every day, right? Dead straight. God forbid you have curly, frizzy hair, right? And now I don't even brush it. I don't even care, right? It's like, yeah, do what you like, be free. My point being is, we do this to ourselves to fit in. The tribe determines what we must be and how we must be, right? And if we're not that, there can be a fracture, there can be an injury, a relational injury. You're pushed from the tribe. You're the black sheep or on the peripheral. Subcultures. I had a laugh about this the other day because, what was it? Not beatboxing. What do they call it? Is it rap dancing? What do they call it now? Hip hop dancing, right? Street dance is in the Olympics now. It's in the Olympics now. Now, I understand it because there's a lot of skill and strength and all that. But I had a conversation about subcultures and where it all came from. And I used to study deviancy. So as a sociologist, right, I would study the human condition. I studied deviancy. Do you know what deviancy is? Anyone that does anything outside of the circle is deviant. You've broken a rule, a societal rule, an unwritten rule. But most subcultures are around the peripheral. So this is where it's sort of funny, not funny. Because if street dancing and the music and the movement and the culture is out here on the peripherals, and then it gets accepted into the center, it's like, whoa, now you're just part of mainstream, aren't you? So what's that feel like? It's the same with art, we're doing this type of art, which is, most artists are seen as deviant because we're on the peripheral. So why? So we can have a clear view of the center. Because, it's like you're part of society, but only just so that you can see. It's like anthropologists, we call it participant observation. So you're in the culture, right? But you're not fully part of it, but you eat what they eat, you learn the traditions, you wear what you're part of, but yet you're not. And you're observing and watching and learning, but you're still not part of that culture. You weren't born into it. You're not, right? This is what anthropology was and is. So there's a lot of bias that can come in. Anyway, so that's all that. But interesting. I had a laugh about it yesterday. I was like, even tattoos and all the tribal stuff that comes into mainstream, and then it's, just absorbed into the status quo, right? Hairdos, fashion. Oh, the punk scene. Remember when, I don't know, some of you, right? Some of you might be too young, but the original punk scene. And when that became fashionable, it was like, no, right? And so then you have the underground. So you have the fringe, but then you have the underground scenes because they don't want to be part of the mainstream. Anyway, so that was interesting. There's a little bit. I mean, look at this picture. So we can use the same picture for what I was about to say. So as you are, here's you're born, and here's your true identity, who you are beyond this physical, right? Who you are. And then you have all these experiences and wants and needs and expressions that are taken in, accepted, not accepted. And, you know, for instance, if your liberty or your freedom was taken away, you know, I spoke to somebody who, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give anything away, but she was brought up in a country, as a child, there's quite a lot of countries that still do this. You put into sports schools or dance schools or whatever, but they take over your life. It's like they're not Western countries, okay? So just, I don't want to mention countries though. And you're brought up in that system, and you're working for the government, right? You're brought up, the government is like your mum and dad. You're brought up that way. You have no freedom. And when you win, you don't get, right? So, or my experience, right? So even though I'm sitting looking at the ocean in paradise, I still at times may feel a restriction on my freedom because the government is telling me when and where I can go, where I and when I want to, right? So to most people, who cares? But for those of you that have had, maybe you were in juvenile detention when you were a kid. Maybe you were in a body cast. I've worked with people who have been in like half body cast because of medical conditions and not able to move in childhood. Or maybe you were, I went to school with a girl who was in one of those, she had spinal issues. I can't remember exactly what, but she had this brace and it was around her whole body. It went over her clothes and she was like in this steel thing. She, you know, she could only do this, right, to support her spine. And it was from her hips. It's like this, I don't know, girdle thing, cast made out of metal. So I guess she could take it on and off. But, you know, I guess that was what they did later on. But, you know, earlier than that, you'd be in like a literal cast. And the trauma from that, or the trauma from medical conditions. I was in a coma when I was 10. You know, a friend of mine, she was in a coma. She had killer measles. And when she came back to school, she had brain damage and she couldn't walk very well and she used to get teased. But because I knew her story, I stood up for her. And when we went to high school, you could imagine, she had to learn to walk again. And then the way that she walked was different. It was a little more, the gait was a little, you know, wider than most, right? So she'd get teased. But she survived something that, you know, killer measles. There's only a couple of people in the world that had that. And she was on the news and all the rest of it. She was my best friend in primary school. But when we got to high school, no one knew her story. So they'd pick on her, right? So the trauma that she went through, just surviving what she survived, and then having to go through all these little assholes, picking on her because she walked different. Anyway, got a million stories. So where do you relate? What's your story? Like, just bring it to mind. Like, maybe you've got things that are worse. Maybe they're not so bad, but they still impact you. Something that you wish or hoped, something that you wanted, your little one wanted. So speaking of the little ones, these are the map makers. So all the little aspects of self. So your younger ones, and this is repeat for some of you, but the more you hear it, the more you'll embody it. Right. So all these little dots and dashes are survival or protective strategies that this inner part of you has to negotiate to get out into the world. And so you're here with your bright, clear eyes, but you're looking through all these different lenses. And maybe you've only got two. Maybe you've only got one. Maybe you've got five. So maybe two are fear, and three are fear of love. So, it might be that when you did experience love or care from an adult, it could often come with pain or sarcasm or some sort of gotcha. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be abuse, like what we traditionally know as abuse, but it could be I'm trying to think of something. What came to mind then was having a hug. Who likes to be tickled? Some people can't handle tickling. It's like you might as well be hitting them, right? So you get a hug, and every time, I don't know, your dad hugs you, he tickles you because he thinks it's funny, because you get a response, So every time you get a hug, or you get married and your husband hugs you, you've got this like on guard. I used to have I'm telling you a lot of story about me, right? You'll know all that. I lived in places where you couldn't let your guard down. So I was on all the time. That's why I was awesome in the army, because nothing could get past me. But if you walked behind me, I'd be, just walk behind me. If I'm sitting on the couch and someone walks behind me, I know you're there, and my whole body goes ready, right? Because we grew up that way. It wasn't safe. You had to fight even to get to the school bus. Right? I'm a pacifist, but don't underestimate it, because everybody who tried regretted it. Because my brother taught me very young, because we had to fight to survive. I didn't go out looking for fights. I didn't go out doing it. But if you came at me, boy or girl, I know how to look after myself, right? You had to. You had to. So as an adult, somebody walks behind me or something comes, my reflexes, I'm right there. And then I did all the martial arts and whatnot. So it's like, so it took me years for that defensive mechanism to lay down, right? I had to be conscious of it and notice, people just walking by me, they're not going to, stick an arm out and punch me or stab me or trip me or whatever, right? They're not going to do that. But if you grow up like that, then even when it's safe, you still have the behaviors. Does that make sense? And maybe you can't relate to this, so I apologize if you can't, but you've got to bring it down to, if that's the extreme and you can recover from extremes, then maybe what you're going through is just a blip. And, you can get on it really quick, really simply. Start working with whatever it was that you didn't get, Maybe it was attention. Maybe you got too much attention. Maybe you didn't get enough attention, right? Too much or not enough. This is trauma. Too much, too fast, too much data, too much information, too fast. Data and information can be sensation, pain, having to think quickly and all the rest of it, right? You know, when you get tired and you can't think and people are still asking you questions, you might get like a bit, So rather than getting angry, right, because that's a defensive response, you may get angry, or you may get, there'll be some sort of reaction to try to get out of the sensation that you're feeling, right? That's these things. These are the map makers. They're protectors. They're the coats of armor that keep you safe. But what happens is, out in the world, they become behaviors or part of the behavior. And often the behavior doesn't serve you anymore, right? You're no longer in danger in that way. So you don't need that armor or that security system rigged up in the same way. And you can shift it and change it. You can. I saw one of the little boys I worked with he was from 3 years old. By the time he was 3 years old, he had had 10 foster placements. One traumatizes the brain, how the brain is connected. It was between 8 and 10. I remember going, wow. And I worked with him intensively. And he went from family to family, and I followed. I was like his auntie. I was the only consistent person in his life. Occasionally I get photos of him, and he's still with, so one of his foster family that I spent most time with, she's like his grandma now. And he would visit and still does and all the rest of it. And she sends me photos. The other family that he's with full time, they used to be his, it used to be the opposite, right? It used to be like, they were his like respite, right? So I worked with him for years and years, but he was very, very violent from very young. And that's why he got moved around a lot. Like you think, how can a little kid be? I remember one kid I worked with, he was 10, and the cop that pepper sprayed him was so distraught because he was the youngest kid. Now, he was going around with a big butcher's knife trying to hurt people, right? These are kids that, right? So I was in the house with him for hours, right? Trying to keep him safe and keep the rest of the family safe. So the rest of the family were bailed up in the bedroom, and I was there with him. Only purely because I can protect myself, right? People come out with weapons all the time. I'm trained. I can protect myself without hurting them. Anyway, the thing was that he got out of the house, and the law, if you're outside with a weapon, the police are involved. So then the police got involved, and it became this whole big thing, and all these cars turned up, and because a neighbor saw him and all the rest of it. And he got taken down. He's lucky he wasn't, more didn't happen, right? Because it was that, right? Because they didn't know him. All they saw was this kid with a knife threatening people, right? They didn't know the story. He was just very aroused, and it takes a long time to calm from that level of dysregulation. This is why nervous system regulation is so important. Now, you might not spin out that far, or you might, who knows, right? But that child as well ended up being able, now this kid, we put, got him into school and whatnot. And the principal would call me and say, he's on the roof, come and help us. That was my job. I was like when it hit the fan, they'd call me. And I'd say, please call me before it hits the fan. How about that? And I'd teach them what to look for, how to help them regulate so it doesn't get to that extreme where they're, fighting with the teachers or hurting other students or whatnot. But this kid, he got kicked out. No one would have him because of his background, no school, no nothing. So I worked with him in the field. So I'd go to his house where he was staying, and he got locked up a bit too in juvie, but juvenile justice. So I'd go and see him, and I'd take him out, and I'd teach him math through walking the park and learning area and whatnot. And the dog, we ended up getting this dog, and he loved this dog, and we're able to teach him how to train the dog and all sorts of stuff. Eventually he was able to get back into school, and then eventually he went to live with his auntie and uncle, his blood auntie and uncle, right, which is a huge deal. And he was able to regulate enough that when he got upset, he didn't go to that extent. But it takes time to rewire the brain. And what we're talking about here, and what you're talking about if you're watching this still, if you've had big T trauma or little t trauma or relational injury, early childhood stuff, it may not be, you may not see it as abuse, but you may see it as neglect, or where you weren't loved or cared for the way that you needed to be. And there's a gap between, I guess what these little ones, your little one, still is screaming out for. And it impacts your relationships, it impacts your jobs, or, how consciously or unconscious you are in your relationships with anybody, right? Why do you do the things you do? How you do the things you do? Because this behavior comes through these lenses or these experiences, these protective or adaptive strategies that are set up early in childhood, and you've got to navigate those. So whether you're going, oh, this is a past life thing or not, it still connects. Do all the past life stuff in the world you want to. Go and do your Akashic record. I can teach you how to do your own. We can do all of that. But you're here in this physical body as well. You're here in this physical body. How many of you have done, so just contemplate this, because I can teach you to be a trance channel or trance healer. I can teach you how to do that, or telepathy, or remote viewing, or all the intuitive studies stuff, mediumship. What else? Reading the Akash, getting your own information. I can teach you all of that. And most of you are doing all of that. And you're still struggling. It's like what I've been shown the last few years through all of this sort of heaven or father or electric sort of energy of spiritual development, is that the earthly mother magnetic water, right, energies need attention as well. Otherwise, you're only half of who you are, which is why you're navigating only on 2 cylinders instead of 4. Right? So to be unconditional love, it's all of it. So we better wrap up because I've been going on for a while and I've got a session soon. But thanks for popping in. If we'll be back on Thursday. What day is it? Tuesday. Thursday I'm here in the afternoons, my afternoon. So anyway, just keep a lookout, or like if you're on the page, like it so you get an alert when we're on next. Going over to the inner circle now for a bit because we went well over. I told stories today. Oh my goodness. All right. But just know, we'll end on this. There is nothing that you've been through that you're not broken. There's not something wrong with you. You're a human, right? The most amazing being. And we haven't reached our full potential. And even just thinking about that can be scary. That's the fear of love. So just when you sit with your full potential. I have seen what I'm moving into for years now, and some of my students know, right? And when I started to really see that, it scared the pants off me. I used to say the bejeebies, but what even is that? Right? It would scare me. I would feel it. And I'd go, it's okay because I'm not that now. I don't have to do that right now. But this is what my future self is doing. And she's showing me how to prepare myself. And so for the last probably 2 years, mainly the last year, I've been listening and practicing and learning more about what she has been doing, because she's showing me what I'm about to do now, because I'm very close to that now. But a year ago, I was like, there's no way. No way. It scared me. That, whether it's sort of greatness to you or not, it doesn't matter. For me, it was something that was like, oh, I can't see myself doing that. Are you sure? Now I can see it. I can go, all right, well, I'm not quite sure about that bit, but, I'm preparing. I've been preparing for 2 years now, right? It's like the Olympics, right? Going back to the Olympics. It's not a short-term thing. If you do something, it's like in business, if you, or even the series we just did, right? We did the series. Do you think that all came in one day or 2 weeks? It was months of interviewing and months of preparing and months of doing all the copy and emails and all the rest, all right? It's a long game. And it's not even finished because now I've got to do the next one and then the next one. And it's a runway for what we're working towards, which some of you have an inkling of. But we're working towards something. It's a movement. Which links, let's go back around to, it links to why that person came into my life at that point and I got scared by it. Because somewhere in me, I understood what it would entail, what the loss would be in the material and relational world. Like in my human world, it's like another death. Right? So do I accept it in my fear, or because I'm scared of all this unknown, I not take that step and just stay where it feels comfortable and good and glorious and blissful? Well, of course I didn't. Right. Here I am. And it goes on, right? It's infinite. We're here for the long play, or the long, the series, the mini series, not the one episode. All right. I think that's all I have to say. So if you missed the weekend, what can I say? It's pretty awesome. I know some of you came to some of it. It was good. So I'll get those in the inner circle, the replay for that. in the next few days. All right, let's wrap up. And hopefully I've closed some circles. Feel like I'm just scanning what's open. What stories didn't I end? Because I sort of went, no. So I guess if you know whatever is going on for you, actually, I'll say this. I was training with Marion Jones for the last few months. Did anyone see her on Good Morning America this morning? 8 a.m. I think she's on the night line or something tonight. She's doing a press run on her comeback. So I don't know if you know her story, but it might be worth going and having a look. I know her story because I work with her, right? And she's coming back. And if you know what she's coming back from, like if you were in solitary confinement for 46 days, how would you go? If you were the best in the world and had all the accolades and then ended up in prison, in solitary confinement, being hated by your country, all the rest of it, right? And then can come back from that. That's just one story. But some of you have had mental health issues, been locked up. I've worked with people like that. I had calls from Spain. It was a mother. She couldn't even speak English, so her sister was translating for her, and her daughter was diagnosed with all this stuff. And in the end, she was so violent that they institutionalized her. And I worked with her. They said she would never live on her own. She would never get out. She'd never live on her own. And I say never. I worked with her. And within, I don't know how many months it was, 4 months or something, she was out. She's got her own unit, living on her own, doing awesome. This was years ago. Another boy, teenage boy, was on the spectrum and very, again, reactive behavior. So would smash up the house. And the mum used to send me photos of the house. Like literally there was no doors left and stuff. Like everything was just smashed up. He just could not regulate. So he was put into a home because the family couldn't cope anymore. And I worked with him distantly, again, similar protocol as well. And he was able to sleep for the first time in his life. All these sorts of things. You can come back from anything. Okay? That's my message. This is your comeback. It's my comeback too. I'm starting from scratch. Are you seeing me in the same clothes all the time? Because I'm still living out of my suitcase. I don't belong anywhere on my itinerary because I still can't leave the country. Soon, I actually go for my biometrics again tomorrow. It'll be my 5th time I've gone. Can you believe it? Anyway, so we say thank you that I'm still in process. Thank you. I'm still in process. All right. So tomorrow, I'll be traveling and seeing all those nice government official faces and just giving them love. Right? We're on this comeback. You can do it. We can do it. So, yours might be a big comeback, or it might be a little one. It might be, you know what? It's time for me now. It's time for me now. And that's what I got from one of the ladies I spoke to yesterday. She's looking after all her family and doing all of this. And she said, I just don't have time to look after me. I said, the best thing, only thing, one thing that you could do that would help all of them is to look after yourself, your self-care. But why would she not be doing that? because she will have a protective strategy that tells her that she's no good unless she's looking after others, unless she's people pleasing, unless she's doing and martyring and all of that. So does she spend the rest of her life doing that until she drops? Or do we raise the awareness of, okay, what is driving the behavior and the environment that we are creating via projected fears? Because when we have it, that's our reality. So look around. I mean, this might trigger some of you. Great. Because it's just how it is. Look around. How am I creating my reality? I know exactly how I'm creating my own reality, and I'm accepting it. Right. I've got to accept, not blindly, consciously. Oh, okay. This, to do what is coming up, this needed to happen. This refinement of my systems needed to happen for me to get here. And you'll understand when we get there. Right? And that can be difficult at times, like this morning when I woke up thinking about my grandparents and my brother. So I'm thankful for the time I had with them, and that they still come to me in my dreams or in my, in my daily life. They come to me. All right, got to go. Much love. See you Thursday.